Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're putting on our investigative reporter hats to dig into a truly fascinating case study. We're actually looking at the highly anticipated sequel to a renowned educational framework. Specifically, we're examining the strategies of a parent who successfully guided multiple kids out of severe emotional paralysis and into high-tier achievements, like getting into medical school. We're going to look really closely at how this parent leads kids out of those incredibly dark emotional lows when they just, completely shut down.
So here is the core mystery we're unraveling. We're looking at a family with multiple children who have vastly different personalities. Some are anxious, some are brave, some plan meticulously, while others are honestly a bit chaotic. Yet every single one of them developed the capability to reach incredibly high academic goals. It really begs the question, right? If their personalities are completely opposite, they can't just be relying on some rigid schedule. There absolutely must be an adaptable, highly effective system at play here that helps them all build this incredible academic capability. Let's find out exactly what that is.
All right, here's our investigative roadmap. We'll be covering 1. The freedom of choice. 2. The vicious avoidance cycle. 3. Naming and unpacking fear. 4. Focusing on the controllable. 5. Taking the smallest step. And 6. Recognizing when to seek help. Let's jump in. Now, to give you just a little bit of context, this explainer acts as the supplementary deep dive to this parent's previous 5 foundational rules. Those are about building the willpower to face difficulties, breaking down massive problems, strictly controlling phone usage, using the good behavior game for open discussion, and crucially, creating a daily parent-child dialogue, even if it's literally just during the commute to school. But there is a critical missing piece we need to address today. What do you do when a child has all these tools, knows exactly how to study, but is emotionally paralyzed and simply does not want to move?
Okay, Section 1, the freedom of choice.
As reporters looking objectively at this case, it becomes super clear that the goal was never, ever forced compliance. It was never about obsessively chasing a medical degree just for the sake of having one. Instead, it was all about building an adaptable system that gives children the unshakable power to choose their own futures. Getting into medical school just happens to be a natural byproduct of a child who has entirely mastered resilience.
Moving on to Section 2, the vicious avoidance cycle.
Listen, we've all been there, right? Staring at a textbook that suddenly looks like an alien artifact. The parent brilliantly mapped out exactly what happens next in this psychological doom loop. A child feels high stress, so they instinctively escape to social media, video games, or reading a novel just to feel better for a second. But that escape is temporary. Hours pass. Now they have significantly less time to study for the exact same exam, which leads to exponentially higher stress. And guess what? That massive stress makes them want to escape even more. It's this vicious cycle that ultimately leads to a total breakdown or just giving up entirely.
That brings us to Section 3, naming and unpacking fear.
Interestingly, global scientific research actually validates the parent's intuitive first step to break this loop. It's a psychological concept called affect labeling. Studies show that helping a child verbally acknowledge, "I am terrified of failing this test," rather than letting them just sit there thinking, "I'm just lazy," actually reduces their subjective distress. Just saying the fear out loud turns a chaotic swirl of panic into a tangible, solvable problem. It's huge. Once the emotion is named, the parent uses something called cognitive reappraisal. They literally sit down and ask a simple yet profoundly effective question. What is the absolute worst that could happen if you fail? And they don't just brush it off with, "Oh, you'll be fine." No, they genuinely discuss it. Maybe you don't get into your top school. Maybe you have to take another year. By doing this, the parent helps the child transform a massive, infinite, world-ending fear into a finite, survivable scenario. When the worst-case scenario becomes something you know you can survive, the fear shrinks.
Next up, Section 4, focusing on the controllable.
So this family heavily leans on the philosophy of, do your best and leave the rest to fate. But you have to understand, this phrase is absolutely not about giving up or being passive. It's actually an active, fierce strategy. It means doing absolutely everything within your power, studying every chapter, reviewing every single mistake, asking every question you can think of, while gracefully accepting that you literally cannot control the test questions, or how well other students perform, or what your final rank will ultimately be.
And this aligns perfectly with what psychologists call psychological flexibility. A massive 2024 meta-analysis covering over 9,000 participants confirms that accepting what you can't control while fiercely acting on what you can drastically lowers psychological rigidity and anxiety. It shifts the entire burden from "I must control the outcome" to "I must do what is valuable right now."
All right, Section 5, taking the smallest step.
When a kid is drowning in stress, counterproductive nagging like, think about your future, only makes the mountain look so much bigger. Instead, the parent prompts the child to take one tiny, almost ridiculously small microstep. Don't look at the whole exam, just open the book, read the first sentence, just write your name on the paper if you have to. This proves to the child that action actually precedes motivation. You don't wait around to feel motivated to start, you start small, and the motivation follows right behind it.
Now, this brings us to a really vital distinction this family makes regarding stress relief. It is absolutely crucial to distinguish between a healthy break after studying and an infinite avoidance tactic before the work has even begun. Playing video games after 6 hours of solid study, that's a healthy release. Playing video games because you haven't studied and are terrified to start, that is just anxiety masquerading as rest.
And the data on this is staggering. 63,323. A massive 2025 meta-analysis involving over 63,000 people from 17 different countries mathematically proves that procrastination and digital escapism don't actually relieve stress. They compound it. Hiding in a video game when you are stressed about school actually increases depression and academic anxiety over time. True rest recharges you. Escapism just traps you in a box.
Which leads us to our final core topic, Section 6, Recognizing When to Seek Help.
A 2026 mega study of nearly 14,000 patients shows that while behavioral activation, like taking those small steps we talked about, is incredibly effective, we must firmly separate educational coaching from actual medical treatment. The parent explicitly stresses this point. If a child is suffering from severe, prolonged emotional darkness, if there are major changes in sleep, appetite, or a complete loss of interest in life, they aren't just being lazy or having a temporary slump. If there's a real problem with depression, you have to see a doctor. In those cases, professional medical help and medication are absolutely non-negotiable and necessary. Knowing when to rely on yourself and when to see a doctor is a true sign of maturity.
So, the absolute most crucial takeaway for you today is this. Educational success is not about creating a robot child who never feels anxious, never wants to play video games, and never falls down. Honestly, that's impossible. True success is about giving children a systematic emotional restart process. It's about them knowing exactly what to do when they inevitably do fall down.
We'll leave you with this final thought to explore. When we push for top-tier academic results, are we just trying to protect our kids from ever failing? Or, like this parent, are we using these challenges to equip them with the resilience to get back up when they inevitably stumble? Because ultimately, building that framework for resilience is the truest, most guaranteed way to give your child lifelong freedom of choice.